Hey everybody, Sean the Good Dog. Happy New Year's, everybody. It's a nice overcast, pretty cozy day here in Louisiana, and I got some quiet time, so I figured I'd check in. I try and do a New Year's post or video every year, and it's challenging sometimes because sometimes I'm super motivated and I've got some really strong ideas I want to share, and other times I feel like, maybe I don't have something that's really pressing that I feel like I need to jump into and jump on. And of course, there's a ton of information out there and people all sharing, New Year's resolution suggestions and ideas and things like that. So it's a lot of traffic out there. It's crowded. But the thing that I come up with, and if this is also interesting that I'm doing this, because if you watched my Instagram stories yesterday, you would have seen and heard me talk about how I don't really do New Year's resolutions. I don't really do holidays much. I don't even think about birthdays and holidays, and I don't really give them any significance other than just being another day. And I know that makes me kind of strange, but I was happy to hear and see Jocko's, if you follow Jocko Willink, Jocko's post today about New Year's, and he started off by saying basically the same thing, that he doesn't really view holidays in a different fashion. They're all just kind of all special good days and days to keep fighting the battle and working towards what you're trying to work towards. So I was like, yes, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. But he also went on to say some really great stuff, far beyond what I showed yesterday in my Instagram story. So if you haven't watched Jocko's New Year's, it's like 11 minutes long, I highly suggest you pop over to Instagram and check that out. But the concept of what could you be is something that, when I was sitting here thinking about, like, what would I like to talk about? It always comes back to that. It comes back to, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with, it's a fairly universal story, but it's also very much my story insofar as that based on certain decisions, certain influences, and certain actions, or put in more correct order, certain influences, which then created certain decisions, which then created certain actions. That's actually the appropriate way to put that order, because that's how it went down. But, excuse me, it's good for people to remember that, and I'll use me as an example because I'm the closest example and the one I know most intimately, but this is like I said, a universal story. But I think folks see that, I'm doing my thing, I'm training, I've got a couple businesses, doing their thing, and I wonder how many people look at that stuff and assume that it's kind of preordained, that it's just who Sean is, that he does that stuff. And I'd really like to remind you guys that is so far from the case. The fact, and if you know my story, you know that I was still, at 40 years old, parking cars as a valet full-time, 5 days a week. Now, I was pursuing music and other things as well, but it doesn't change the fact that my reality was I was, I don't know, trying to remember back, it's a long time ago. That's 13 going on 14 years ago. But I was probably making $8, $9 an hour, plus tips on good nights, and standing in the back alley of a restaurant and taking people's cars and parking them and dealing with some nice people and dealing with some very not nice people sometimes, and And it's a very humbling experience being in a situation where you're 40 years old and people coming in and you know, you're in a very humble position. Hand you their keys and say, it was a famous story in our valet clique, but like, keep it close. Which was always a sign of someone you're like, and because it typically didn't come with money at the same time. Like, here's $20, keep it close. That's a different proposition. It's like, ooh, okay, we can do that, but just keep it close. That was always just a running joke that we would always say to each other. But being in a situation where you're 40 years old and you're a valet. I was a musician as well, a drummer. At 38, I started to have a few accomplishments. I've been playing since I was young, but money, anything like that, nothing like that. We toured and we played on, I was lucky to play on some very nice records and some songs that did very well. We didn't make any money off that. We didn't make really any money off the tours or anything like that. So yes, there was the music thing going on, but the way I took care of myself and the way I paid the bills for the most part was valeting cars. And I wasn't just a valet for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I was a valet for 10 full years. And so I worked at a restaurant, the Bistro Garden. It's still there in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard. Feel free to visit. You can drive in that back alley and you can go, oh yeah, Sean used to work here. I used to stand in that back alley 5 nights a week, freezing my buns off during the winter and in the rain and poof. But I also worked a ton of parties. The business I worked for did a bunch of private parties, so I would, drive to Bel Air and all sorts of, wealthy areas, Hollywood Hills, and do a lot of stuff like that where I worked, weddings and birthdays and, movie releases and things like that. So what I'm trying to get at is that, and before that, just to lay like even more like a bit more on you, was that the 10 years prior to that, I was still a musician, still trying to find my way. But I worked in a record store for another 10 years and slinging, CDs and vinyl back in the day and cassette tapes and all that stuff at Moby Disc record stores, which don't exist anymore. But I worked at two different locations over a 10-year period. Now, absolutely making like, probably $7 an hour or something like that. Typically, my tax burden was none because many years I was under the actual, there's a cutoff point. Can't remember what it is, but a cutoff point where they're like, you made so little money, you don't even have to worry about paying your taxes. Of course, like, sales taxes and things like that, but like federal taxes. And so many years I just skated under that because I was making such little money. So if you can fathom the guy that perhaps, and I don't mean this in any arrogant fashion, but if you can fathom the guy that you might think, has got it together and has all this stuff happening, has created, multiple businesses and written multiple books and created training programs and, done seminars and workshops and have a shadow program and, have a team and have worked with a lot of dogs, a lot of challenging situations and challenging dogs and have made some really positive impact through all of that work, along with all the posts, all the videos, all of the written posts, all of the content I've created and all of the effort that I've put into in the dog world. You might look at that and be disconnected from the past stuff. And I just kind of want to reconnect you to it because I think it's I think it's a critical piece for anybody who's not where they want to be. And that's that you can see all this stuff now, and it can easily feel, like I said, it's a preordained thing. He had that thing happening. It, came easy to him. He likes to write, or whatever it might be. Fact is, I spent 10 years in a record store, miserable, angry, bitter, resentful. Then I spent 10 years as a valet, miserable, angry, resentful. No one to blame me. I could have made all sorts of different decisions, which I did later on, but my mindset was in such a state or such a space where that wasn't something that I knew was available to me. And so I just trudged along and kept, I think the music part kept me optimistic that something might change. Like, hey, you could strike gold and something amazing happens, and you've got hit songs that are making you all sorts of money, and, things like that. But we weren't in a pop band or anything, so that probably wasn't going to happen. But it still kept that flame of optimism going. But the reality is that when you're getting older and older and older, and you're not seeing anything moving in the right direction, and you're getting into your later 30s, and then you actually hit 39, and then you hit 40, and life is not what you want it to be, and you're not where you want to be, and you're not who you want to be, and you don't know how to get out of your own way, it can feel super dark, super hopeless, super overwhelming. And what I want to share in this video is just to remind you guys that the person that you see sitting in front of you now talking, the person who's put out all the different stuff that he's put out and the things that he's accomplished, those weren't easy things. They weren't natural things. They didn't come natural. They didn't come easy. They weren't something I had in my back pocket as my plan B in case, the music thing didn't work out. No, this was something that I had to cultivate and develop and build within myself in order to create this new current reality. So the Sean you see in front of you, and whatever Sean has done, I hate talking to myself in the second, third person, but this guy you see sitting in front of you, and all the stuff that I've managed to accomplish, this wasn't preordained. This wasn't, specialness or anything like this. It was simply just hard work. And I know that sounds super simple and trite and all that, but I'm gonna dig a little deeper with that. So the hard work isn't just doing the work of writing posts. The hard work, most of it, you guys never see. And that's the hard work of spending 4 hours a day studying, reading, journaling, studying videos, not just mindlessly watching videos. I'll sneak some mindless stuff in occasionally. For the most part, 3 to 4, maybe sometimes even 5 hours of reading and studying, not just like going through a book, gotta check, done. No, all my books are scribbled in, and if you've seen my books, you've seen that they look like journals. They're just written all over the place. Ideas investigated as I'm going through the books, pausing, stopping to try and gather information and glean whatever value might be in a paragraph or a sentence or whatever it might be, and then writing that down and trying to pursue the idea. Like a lot of times on the pages on my books, that not my books but books that I'm reading, you'll see me like go around all the text, and it's just like an idea with arrows, like and you can see the ideas develop as I'm trying to figure out what the the hell is this thing? I can see a kernel of something, but I don't know what it is. And so I'll keep writing. And maybe I'll even end up on the next page or the next page until I finally get to the understanding of what that kernel is that I'm trying to grab onto. So those are the kinds of things that you don't see. You don't see the waking up at 5 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning or 5:30 if I'm, or 6 if I'm being like lazy or I've had a long night. But typically it's like 5 in the morning and I'm up, and my consistent habit is I study my ass off. I'm reading, I'm viewing, I'm taking notes, I'm pausing, I'm thinking through ideas, I'm letting ideas unfold, I'm challenging myself to explore things that seem exciting and interesting. And I'm writing stuff down anytime ideas are striking me, whether if I'm on the elliptical machine, all I've got is my phone, I don't have a pad of paper or anything, I'll write it in my notes, in my Apple Notes, and capture ideas and things like that. My point is that when I was still a valet, at about 34 maybe, 35, it's hard for me to remember exactly when, let's say 34, 35, I started getting into some different books. I started getting into, and this actually came from, my arm's falling asleep. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. This actually came from watching The Dog Whisperer back in the day. And I know he's a super polarizing figure, so spare me any kind of like, he's a terrible man, or he's the best, or like, it's not what this is about. What it's about is that he was talking about a handful of books that had been really important to him. So, being a big fan of what I saw going on, and letting him kind of guide me in a direction as far as some suggestions about some books, which is why I said influence is before decisions and before actions. And so I started reading books that he had recommended that were super pivotal. One was a Wayne Dyer book, Power of Intention, of course, Gift of Fear. A lot of folks have heard about that. And then and a few other books, and those all led me in directions of pursuing new books, right? And it's a ripple effect of, okay, so you start here, you don't really know anything, and you're studying, you're reading, you get something interesting, ooh, that lights a fire of something, thought-wise. And then you start looking for books that might expand on that. And you keep following all these different trails all over the place until you start to develop a sense of what you believe, what things are most intriguing and most valuable. And so that's what I did. I just kind of blindly started, sorry, my big hand's in the way. I started foraging through books, trying to find, and there was a lot of wasted money on books that didn't resonate, wasted time on books that didn't resonate. It's just, that's the way things go, right? If we're trying to pursue things and find things of value, we're going to find a lot of things that aren't valuable until we start to stumble onto a few of the things that are valuable. And so I just followed that logical trail of things that were interesting and valuable. Things that were interesting and valuable, until that got better and better and better, and those skills got more and more finally honed, and the excitement was building and building about, wow, there's a whole other world out here. There's a whole other thing that I'm not even aware of, or I wasn't even aware of. And I've been living my life in this fashion without this incredibly important information. No wonder I'm struggling, because I don't know anything. I don't know any of the stuff that I need to know, to be able to excel. So once I started to find the things, the pieces of information in books and audiobooks and videos and DVDs back in the day, I got really excited. I was like, okay, I started to find the breadcrumbs that felt like they were actually leading somewhere pretty valuable, and they were. And so I kept honing and kind of narrowing the parameters of, not closing off ideas or authors or speakers, but like I started to get a pretty good sense of what I thought was really valuable, what I thought was really motivating certain thoughts and certain actions. And so I went after them hard and obsessively, and in a handful of 3-4 years, which would put me at like 38, I was a pretty different person. Now, I was still valeting cars and I was still playing music, but I was starting to change. I was really starting to move into a different direction. And I started noticing that I started to not make sense to a lot of people in my life, and they started to not make sense to me. Why? Because I was starting to grow and have some different beliefs. I had a different value system and different code, and a different mindset was starting to develop. And eventually, a lot of the ways that I used to live, and the ways I used to be, and the ways I used to show up in the world didn't work for me and didn't make sense anymore. Didn't resonate, didn't feel good, didn't feel valuable, didn't feel healthy. They weren't things I could be proud of. And so I kept pursuing and pursuing and pursuing more knowledge, more information, and taking action on it. So not just sitting around reading books, but watching videos, but taking in the information, but then making sure I was taking action on that stuff, because all that information without action is really just, you're a smart blob that's not doing anything. So I did both. I did the work of feeding my mind to where, and I'm talking work, like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. You have to wrap your head around that. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter on like really like busy, hectic days. But I would be happy to spend 6 hours, 7 hours a day just studying, because I realized how far behind I was, how much time I'd wasted, that at 34, 35, 36, 40 years old, I'm way behind what I should know, and also what I should have accomplished. And so I went after it like a man possessed and obsessed. And what ended up happening was that I started to move away from the music world, and I got very interested in the dog world. And so the influences that I was surrounding myself with virtually, books, videos, audiobooks, what have you, started to really push me in a direction of feeling empowered to go after things that I would have never thought I could do on my own. Self-belief, self-reliance, self-confidence, all of these different things started to get the ball rolling. And and next thing you know, I was, walking dogs. First, if you know my story, I had dogs that were very bad. And so first I got them into a great space, which I probably started around, 33, 34, I'm guessing, but somewhere around there. 33, 34, I started to try and get my shit together with myself, with my own dogs. And then within 2-3 years, I was in a pretty darn good space with them. and I'd already learned a ton by studying everything. And anybody else who follows me knows I also started out in the pure positive world, and so I'd read all of those books. I understood all of the information there. I applied that stuff. I quickly found the limitations with that stuff, and then so I started looking in other areas to find more information. And with luckily enough, I had really serious dogs. And so that enabled me to have an opportunity to try and practice and find out what worked best with them. And so I found my way through, dog aggression, massive reactivity, and just terrible behavior overall and terrible manners, and had them both completely off-leash trained, and just kept moving down the line with that, becoming pretty adept at the concepts, developing the concepts I believed in as far as training and how to use the tools. And then people started asking me for help. They would see me walking my own dogs. By that time I had 3 dogs, and they would see me walking these 3 dogs that just looked like this. And so people started asking me for help to walk their dogs. So I did that. That quickly led into me being offered opportunities to train dogs. I jumped on that because my mindset was such that I felt I could do anything. And that has everything to do with the influences I surrounded myself with. All the books I was reading were all giving me information, a foundational, set of skills and tools, but also fucking go do this. Go do this thing. Go, like Seth Godin was so important for that stuff. You'll never be ready. You'll never be ready. Start where you are. And really encouraged me to move forward before, people would say, you're ready to go, because we're typically our biggest police with that, and we'll hold ourselves back, and we're never ready. And so I got out and I did that, and next thing I know, I had a fairly successful business. And then the business grew, and then started working on a second location here in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and I had the location in Los Angeles. Then put out a DVD, put out a second DVD, wrote a first book, wrote another book, Closing the Gap, which a lot of folks don't know about, which is more about this whole journey. Closing the Gap is not a dog training book, it's a human training book. It's all about getting your life together and how I did it. And it's really kind of lays it out in a very simple kind of format of how I did it, or outline. And then I wrote a third book. I put out a gazillion posts over, 15, 16 years. I've trained a ton of people through seminars with T3, through TGD workshops, through our shadow programs, trainers who worked for me, and then just, online, educating people online and virtually through the DVDs and the books and things like that. And so here I sit before you now. I haven't achieved, there's so many more goals, so many more things that I'm trying to hit, that I'm going after. So this is by no means like, yahoo, I'm at the finish line. I'm nowhere near the finish line of what I'm trying to achieve. But to be here when at 40 I was parking cars, and let's put it like, let's be really blunt. Let's say at 36, because at 40 I was parking cars, but my mindset was starting to change. But at like 35, 36, I was parking cars, and I was a toxic, miserable, angry, resentful disaster. So it started to get better as I moved towards 40. But imagine being 36, let's say, and you're a full-time valet, and you've got no real prospects for your future, and you're a resentful, angry, bitter, miserable person who's running around in a, monkey suit, a blue polyester monkey suit, parking people's cars. And then imagine where I am now. And I'm not saying I'm the king of the heap, top of the heap, the king of the world, anything like that. I'm just saying that the difference from then to now is so incredibly profound. And I want to make sure that folks understand that the road to accomplishing that is, you got to change this. If you're looking at something for your 2022 and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to, go after my goals? How am I going to make more things happen? How am I going to sort through things that have been tripping me up consistently? How am I going to become more the person that I want to be? How am I going to become closer to the human I want to be? How am I going to show up how I want to show up? How am I going to be, sorry, my hand keeps getting in the way. It's because my arm's falling asleep. How am I going to be more proud of myself? It's to me, it's a simple process. And that's why this is not a push for my book, Closing the Gap, but you can get it on Amazon or Audible if you want. It's super cheap. It's all the money goes to charity, so I don't even get anything from it. But it's like a 100-page book, super short. But the first chapter in that book is influence. It's not visualization. It's not, take action. It's influence. And that's because I believe that everything else that's come for me, and I believe that everything else that comes for people that achieve things, comes from first the influence on their mind. No, the influence on their mind to get things into a different space. So I'm super distracted. Noise going on. No. I've got people like tap dancing around over there. Hang on a second. Down. So this is going to be a super, super long video. Sorry guys, I meant for it to be much shorter, but you know me, I'm not good with the brevity. So the way that I got from where I was to where I am now, and the way that I believe personally that you can get from wherever you are currently to where you want to go down the road, doesn't mean it's going to be hop, skip, and a jump, doesn't mean it'll happen straight away. But if you want what I personally have experienced, no BS, no, trying to sell you some motivation or anything, just straight up talk of what I think will help you most to get there and have the best chance of realizing your goals and your dreams, is you have to absolutely change your influences. You have to get the right stuff into your mind. It's the operating system that makes everything else happen. And if you aren't if you're not feeding it the right stuff, then, like I said, the thoughts that come after it, that follow, are not going to create the actions, which are not going to create the reality that you want. You have to just keep moving backwards to where you need to where your starting point needs to be. Because if you just take actions and you don't have your mind in the right space, you'll get feedback from it, but it's going to be a very, very poor approach to getting feedback. I'd much rather you have a really, really great mindset, so you take action, and then the feedback you get is a much higher quality feedback than it would be otherwise. So my recommendation for 2022, for any of you guys out there that want to make something happen for yourselves, you want this year to be different, you want the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it is, to be different, get your influences straight. Get them straight. Make, like, it's life or death. get so fucking serious about what you're going to allow in here that you guard this thing with your life, because it is your life. It's going to determine your life. What you let in here and here, what you take in, is going to determine what happens for you. So, close this out, I'd say you're sitting here, first day of 2022, or whenever the hell you're watching this, decide, where are you at? Are you exceptionally happy? Maybe you're already rocking and rolling. Then, like, hey, you can just be like, cool, thumbs up. Sean confirmed what I'm doing. I'm doing the right thing, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but you get where I'm going with that. But if things are not where you want them to be, and you have an honest check-in with yourself, and you don't feel like your mindset is in the space to go out and conquer the world and make dreams real and grab things by the throat and be like, no, I'm going to change this stuff that I don't like about me. I'm going to change this stuff that I don't like about my reality. I'm going to have more options, have more freedom, have more fulfillment, have more positive impact. Okay, I need to start feeding this thing only the very, very, very best stuff. And I need to get rid of everything else. That's the whole thing. It's really a two-part strategy. You cut off all of the negative crap, all the negative shit out there that you could allow to come in, and you have to be the policeman for that. So the books you read, the videos, social media people you follow, friends, family, everybody, you've got to become ruthless with what you're going to cut out or reduce. And so the toxic stuff has to end. And then you have to bring in all of the great stuff as best as you possibly can. And if you do that, if you take out the trash and you bring in amazing stuff, think about your house, think about your brain like your life, your brain and your life like a house. And you moved into a fixer-upper that's just a wreck, and there's stuff from the last tenants that's just a disaster. Well, first you got to clean it up. Get all that shit out. Clean it up. Just get all of the crap out of there. That's getting rid of all the toxic influence stuff. Clean the house out. And then start the fixer-upper process. Start the fixing it up. But you're fixing up you. But you see how if you were to move into a house that was a disaster and you had a dream for it to be something that's not a disaster, but it's something that's beautiful, then you would first clean it out. You would make sure that no more stuff comes into it that makes it a disaster and makes it a mess. And then you would start beautifying it. Then you would start adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. And letting the feedback come from, oh, I really like that painting there. I like that chair there. Or I really like those blinds. And just keep adding and building and building. Adding and building and building until you have this beautiful home. And I'm telling you guys, it's no different for your life. You gotta take out the trash. You gotta clean out the brain, clean out everything, and then you've got to say no more comes in, and then you've got to start the beautifying process. And the beautifying process is all the stuff you're going to decorate it with, and that's the mindset work. That's all of the people, all of the thoughts, all of the ideas, the things that have come before you. There's so much amazing stuff out there floating around, much of it for free, that you can take in if you'll do the work. If you'll do the work to study, if you'll do the work to journal and write down your thoughts, if you'll do the work to pause when you have ideas and questions come up, and sit in the discomfort of like, I'm not sure about that. Let me explore that idea. Let me follow this wherever it's going to go. Let me just go with it. But you have to sit through the discomfort. Reading books for a lot of people is not comfortable. Sitting through audiobooks is for a lot of people, not comfortable. Journaling for a lot of people is not comfortable. It's not the point. The point isn't for it to be comfortable. The point is for it to beautify this, beautify the home that you live in. And if it means enough to you, then you'd be willing to do that work, even if it's uncomfortable. You'd be willing to do whatever it takes to beautify this life. So this short amount of time that you have on this planet, you can actually be proud of. And when it is your time to step off, you can be proud that, you know what, I showed up, I had my challenges, I had my problems, I had my hang-ups, and yet I fought exceptionally hard to sort through my stuff, my bullshit, sort through it, try and resolve it as best as I can, and then make something really special happen. And man, if you can live a life like that, that's on that trajectory, even if you're not like, nobody hits like the finish line, but if you're on this trajectory of like constantly working towards being proud of yourself and building this beautiful thing, man, that's a great way to live. And like I said, it sounds a little dark, but it's also a great way to die. So if you are, because we're all going to, if you are planning on dying, if you are going to die at some point, like we all are, then wouldn't it be best to know that you've done everything you possibly could to make this life as special as you possibly could and impacted as many people as you possibly could? So you didn't just live this life where you just kind of were here, showed up, did your thing, cashed your checks, watched your TV, maybe had a family. And I'm not taking away from folks that want to do that. I'm just saying, what if there's more? What if there's more to you? What if there's far more to you? What if you not pursuing your very best means that the rest of us would be missing a whole bunch? What if you not pursuing your best means that you're actually robbing the rest of your community, and maybe even a wider net than just your community, of incredibly valuable, important things just because you didn't show up and do the hard work to explore who you could be? Heavy thoughts, heavy stuff, but life's a heavy thing. And so those are my New Year's thoughts, just kind of off the top of my head, just rolling with it. And I hope they're helpful for you guys. You can always ask me questions if I have any book suggestions. I have lots. Video suggestions, I have lots. Audiobook suggestions, I have lots. I have a lot of suggestions about a lot of that stuff. So if you are in a space where you're looking for some of that, you can definitely let me know. If you made it to the end of this video, I'd be shocked because it's so long, but maybe you have. And yeah, so another year lies ahead of you. What are you going to do with it? Who are you going to be? What could you be? I don't know. If I wouldn't have made those choices and changed things around and done that hard work, maybe I'd still be valeting cars. Or maybe I'd have moved on to my next kind of menial job where I was delivering to the world far less what I could have. And that's really what I'm trying to get at, is all the things that have helped people, that have left an impact, that have been a positive impact on people from me showing up in a fuller form, in a more developed fashion, in a more fully realized fashion, has had a really positive impact on a lot of people. And I could have just not ever done that. I could have never just shown up because I didn't do the work, and I would just be at my next job. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, maybe that's you. Maybe we're waiting on you. And if you don't do that work, maybe we don't ever get that stuff. And I always think about that. I always think about the folks that showed up that have been so meaningful to me, that if they hadn't done their work and they hadn't shown up for me, what might that have meant for me if I never had that impact from them? That's that's a terrifying thought. To think about all the things that I find valuable, to think about the people that if they wouldn't have done those things or done that hard work or pushed through the challenges to show up and do their thing, I would have personally never benefited from that. And then folks, you see how it's just a ripple effect. Folks that have benefited from me or anybody else that has shown up and done their thing wouldn't have gotten that benefit if that chain of events of people showing up, doing their very, very best, struggling through, trying to realize their best, their potential. If that chain's broken, you know, it's stuff we'll never know. We'll never know like what would happen if somebody I can't even fathom how many people have not shown up and have indeed robbed all of us of their beauty and their magic and their specialness, their uniqueness. And all I can say is, don't be one of them. And, you know, it's up to each one of us to continue that chain of events, that positive chain of trying to make things better and try and have a positive impact on who knows how many people, and then keep that thing rolling. So with that, I'm going to take my leave. I hope you guys are good. Sorry this is so long, but I guess it had to be. Happy New Year's, and love you guys. Take care and wish you the best.